You ever think about how the MCU turned a sarcastic billionaire in a metal suit and a juiced up soldier into icons? Because once upon a time, if you said to any superhero fan that the Captain America vs. Iron Man movie will blow Batman and Superman out of the water critically and financially, people would have laughed in your face. And yet, here we are. How does that happen? How does a franchise that has arguably the most iconic superheroes of all time, characters who practically define the genre, fall so far behind the studio they had to make people care about a talking raccoon? First, the idea of one having better characters doesn't even come to mind because anyone with common sense would know DC straight up had that in their bag. So in this video, I'm going to delve into that and uncover the truth of why the Marvel Cinematic Universe worked and why the DC Extended Universe didn't. So let's rewind back to 2008. The superhero movie scene wasn't exactly on fire. Spider-Man 3 just left a bad taste in the mouth, X-Men was doing alright, and DC had The Dark Knight, a masterpiece sure, but isolated. At this time, DC never really put much thought about the cinematic universe. Only in 2008 for Marvel to come in with Iron Man. No one expected it to blow up the way it did. Prior to that, no one even cared about who Iron Man was, except you were a die-hard comic book fan or maybe have seen one or two cartoons that aired featuring Iron Man one way or the other. But apart from that, no one practically gave a damn about Iron Man, and not enough to go see a movie about him, due to the fact that he was amongst the B-list characters, a leftover after Marvel sold the rights of all their big shots like the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, and even Spider-Man to others studios. They did this because they were going bankrupt. So no one thought or expected Iron Man would become a cultural icon. No one expected the movie to do well. No one expected the movie to be good. But it did. And Marvel used that momentum very well. Marvel Studios had a vision, not just a movie, a universe. And that universe was going to be carefully built, brick by brick. Each film was a setup. Iron Man, the Incredible Hulk, Thor, Captain America, leading all the way to the Avengers. A bold, risky, unheard of concept. Interconnected storylines that respected continuity and character development. For context, this movie did wonders at the box office because for the very first time such a concept had been explored, and it was done beautifully, blending every character throughout every movie into one singular movie. Meanwhile, DC watched this unfold like a kid picking over their friend's shoulder during a test and thought, yo, I can do that too, except they didn't study. DC, seeing the success of Marvel over the years, thought, you know, it's about time they brought the rivalry to the theaters too. They started by requesting Christopher Nolan, the director of the Dark Knight trilogy, who rejected the offer at first but suggested Zack Snyder to DC, a director known for his work on The Watchmen, which was considered by many a good film. He was given control over DC, which was set to kick off with Man of Steel in 2013, a movie that was proving a decent start, a controversial one, but solid. It was controversial because it wanted to detach itself from Marvel so far that it decided to change the core of Superman a bit. But although there were complaints of, you know, Superman, people let it slide if and only if Superman would redeem himself later on. Only for the next movie, he fucking dies. And in one of the most underwhelming way possible. DC literally took the audience and yanked them into a complete mess that was Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, a film that tried to do 5 movies worth of work in 2.5 hours. It introduced Batman, Wonder Woman, Lex Luthor, Doomsday, a broken Superman, a Flash from the future, a dying Lois Lane as the key to everything, and then kills Superman, all in one movie. Marvel took 4 years, 5 solo movies to build up to their first big team up. DC tried to skip that build up and force an emotional payoff that hadn't been earned yet, and that was just the beginning of the entire mess. One thing we need to understand is that numbers in the box office wasn't all that made the MCU what it is now. It wasn't just its universe structure, it was, however, in its characters. Tony Stark had an arc. Steve Rogers had depth. Thor went from stiff Shakespearean god to a lovable himbo space Viking. We saw them evolve across the multiple films. We laughed with them, we cried with them, and we definitely grew with some of these characters. When Tony said, "I am Iron Man," and snapped his fingers, we felt that because we watched him go from selfish to selfless across a decade. That moment was earned. Imagine if it went like this. Marvel introduced Iron Man, then in his next movie, he fights Captain America, but then Iron Man dies. Don't you hear how crazy that sounds? That's exactly what the DCEU did with Superman, and it was definitely crazy. Superman starts off conflicted and bored in the Man of Steel. Okay, cool. Then in Batman v Superman, he's even more conflicted and less hopeful, and before we can even fully process this moody, unsure version of Clark Kent, he dies, and then comes back as a glorified plot device in Justice League. There's no growth, no payoff, just forced stakes. Even Batman, a character who has decades of layered psychology, is introduced mid-career, already jaded, branding people and straight up murdering criminals. We didn't even get time to invest in him as a character. We didn't know anything about him. All we knew is that Robin died. How did he die? Why did he turn evil? Why is he fucking killing? There is no build up. He went from a new guy to I'm gonna kill Superman in record time. And all he did to change his mind was one of the dumbest things I've ever heard.
Save Martha! Okay.
Marvel gave us layers. DC just wanted to give vibes because they knew that we knew who these characters were, so we will watch it the other way. There's something essential that Marvel had that the DCEU was lacking or afraid to commit to, and that was in tone. Marvel's tone is often criticized by many to being too quippy or being too lighthearted, which is fair, but they knew how to balance the serious stakes with humor. Winter Soldier was a political thriller, Civil War was tragic, Infinity War was devastating, but the lighter moments made the dark ones hit way harder. DC, on the other hand, had tonal whiplash. Zack Snyder's vision was dark, mythic, operatic, and honestly, that's not a bad thing. But WB didn't commit to it. Suicide Squad was originally marketed as a gritty, grounded anti-hero film. Then Guardians of the Galaxy dropped, and suddenly WB wanted fun. They panicked. They hired a trailer company to record the whole film, and we ended up with, well, we all saw it, and if it didn't, it's probably for the best. And the Justice League wasn't safe either. Snyder left after a family tragedy, and instead of pausing production or supporting the original vision, WB instead had a brilliant plan to instead hire the director of the first Avengers movie, Joss Whedon, to reshoot like 80% of the movie. Suddenly, a dark, emotional story turns into a Frankenstein monster of cheesy one-liners, terrible CGI. Especially that beard scene. And well, the entire movie was bad as hell. Marvel didn't have this problem because they trusted their leadership. Kevin Feige called the shots and the studio backed him up, and that worked for the betterment of Marvel. DC, on the other hand, didn't have a Feige. They had suits and lots of money to spend. Here's the thing about audience that Marvel quickly grasped or understood, but DC didn't. That an audience trust is something you have to earn. Marvel earned Endgame, literally and figuratively. When Cap wields Mjolnir, the theaters explode because it was set up in Avengers Age of Ultron. When Iron Man snapped his fingers, we know how much character development he had to go through to sacrifice himself, with no regret. Everything about the MCU character-wise came full circle in Endgame, and those that didn't carried on and are still becoming something today in the current MCU. DC tried to earn audience tears without giving us time to fall in love with the characters first. They assumed that because these characters were already well known, they don't need to put much effort into their movies or anything, but that didn't seem to be the case. Superman's death in Batman v Superman should have been monumental. Instead, it was more confusing than emotional. It definitely wasn't for the general audience, it wasn't for comic book fans, it was just kinda there to look dramatic. Even Wonder Woman, which was a genuinely great movie, got sidelined in Justice League. Her character felt flatter, her strength toned down, and her backstory barely touched. You can't cheat the process in anything. Marvel movies started to feel like their own thing, each with their own flavor. Ant-Man was a heist movie, Doctor Strange was a mind-bending acid trip, Black Panther was a socio-political drama with sci-fi elements. The DC Extended Universe weren't even sure where they wanted to go to. Were they following Snyder's vision? Were they going light like Marvel? Was Birds of Prey connected to Suicide Squad? Was Shazam even in the same universe? The DCEU became a mess of soft reboots, alternate universes, and vague continuity. And don't get me wrong, Joker was amazing, the Batman was brilliant, but those weren't DCEU movies, they were DC Elseworlds, which honestly might be the direction they should have taken from the start, because it would have given them enough time to flesh out the kind of universes they wanted to build, instead of jumping on the bandwagon or throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. That kind of thinking would have avoided the DC Extended Universe to becoming a joke of a cinematic universe. So why did the MCU work and the DCEU didn't? Simple, it's because of consistency. Marvel committed to the long game, they invested in characters, they had a clear vision, they respected the audience's intelligence and patience. They weren't chasing money at the time, sure they were, but their emphasis wasn't just on it, but sticking to a formula and going through with it no matter the odds. This is something the DCEU was afraid of and avoided. One critic, one flop, meant changing everything, meant panic, and meant pressure. DC had all the tools, all the legacy, and all the powerhouses, and certainly all the money, but they rushed everything. They second guessed, they panicked, they got in their own way. But in a sense, I kinda think it's not too late, because with James Gunn stepping in, there is hope. The upcoming Superman reboot, the structure, the clarified continuity, it all shows promise. I mean, have you seen that trailer? I've seen it like 300 times now, and I can't get enough of it because it's genuinely pleasing. If DC stops chasing Marvel and starts just being DC, embracing its own tone, its own story, its own mythos. It can thrive, and above all else, they should please actually hire directors with love and respect to the source material to direct. The truth is, we don't want Marvel clones. We want both universes to win. We want epic stories on both sides of the comic book aisle. So what do you think led to the downfall of the DCEU? Let's know in the comments. Also, like and subscribe so you don't miss the next upload, or just to help grow the channel. Click here to know if superhero movies should be more fantastical or realistic. But until next time, I'm out.